Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order, the Recycled Water Committee meeting here. Chai, can we have a roll call?
Marina Coast,
Present.
Castroville,
Here.
Pacific Grove, Baranda,
Here.
Monterey. We have a quorum.
Thanks, Chai. At this time, I'd like to ask if there's any additions to the agenda from anybody here? No additions to the agenda. Okay, could we have approval of the agenda?
Move approval? I'll second.
Thank you. Motion's passed. What?
Yeah, you gotta do both. Public comment?
Oh, is there any public comments on the agenda?
And for those on Zoom, please raise your Zoom hand if you'd like to comment. I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, moving on. Consider approval of the Recycled Water Committee minutes of March 20th, 2025.
We need a vote on the agenda.
The agenda, we just need to vote.
Oh,
All in favor. You just need to say
Okay.
all in favor.
all in favor?
Say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And then,
Public comments.
is there any public comments on the approval of the Recycled Water Committee minutes?
Don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, very good. So we can move on to item 7.
6.
Six. We gotta take a vote on 6.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve the recycled.
Do I have a
minutes.
motion to approve the Recycled Water Committee minutes?
Yeah, I'll so move.
Second?
Okay. Opposed? Very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
Opposed.
And
Okay.
just to jump in, sorry, have we asked for public comments on items not on the agenda yet? It's item 5.
Yeah. no,
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on to item 7.
Mhm.
Okay, we have an update on the interim City of Salinas Industrial Wastewater Treatment Facility effluent agreement with the City of Salinas and the Monterey County Water Resources Agency. And with that, we will have Sarah.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sarah Snyder. I'm the Environmental and Regulatory Compliance Supervisor for Monterey One Water. This item is informational only. And as we're all aware, Monterey One Water operates and maintains the regional treatment plant, which provides secondary effluent that can be sent for additional treatment and beneficial reuse at the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project or to the Pure Water Monterey Advanced Water Purification Facility. Any unused secondary effluent is discharged to our ocean outfall. The City of Salinas owns and operates the Industrial Wastewater Collection and Conveyance System, which conveys industrial wastewater, or IWW, from agricultural processing businesses to the Industrial Wastewater Treatment Facility, or IWTF. The city has requested M1W accept a minimum monthly average of 1 million gallons per day of treated IWW from Pond 3 to assist with pond management. Therefore, the City of Salinas, Monterey County Water Resources Agency, and M1W have been in the process of developing an interim agreement to meet the city's needs, which includes provisions specifying the agreement terms, cost allocations, water quality metrics, and monthly reporting. The city and WRA are trying to obtain their respective board and council approvals of the final draft this month. And therefore, if successful in that endeavor, M1W staff anticipates bringing the final interim agreement before this board at the regularly scheduled meeting on April 28th. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Directors, Tom?
So progress on a permanent agreement?
The parties have discussed that, and this is meant to be a short-term agreement currently for 6 months with options for 2 extensions upon mutual agreement, with the understanding that we're all committed to moving forward with those long-term negotiations.
So maybe within 18 months, we'll have a long-term agreement.
Hopefully sooner.
All right. And just for information of the public, the water we take there is treated to what level?
So it receives aeration treatment. which knocks down the BODs and basically stabilizes that water. So this would not apply to direct diversions, only to that treated IWW effluent.
Okay, so that's essentially one stage of treatment, basically.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question. So it says here the city, the agency, and M1 have been working together. Has there been meetings going on this past couple months? Yeah.
Yes, the last couple of weeks. We've met once a week for the past 3 weeks, and there's been a series of internet traffic. So we're working very closely together.
Okay. Very good. Is there any comments in the public? Hi.
Don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay. So I guess we will move on to item 8. From Frank Rich,
Yes.
Director of Informational Systems, consider recommending approval of 2 purchase order amendments for the corporate network refresh project by $112,680 for a not to exceed amount of $329,510.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. So this item is, like mentioned, is for 2 purchase order amendments for a purchase that was originally approved by the board in September that utilized the Omnia Partners Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. The original purchase was to replace our network firewalls and switches on the corporate network as they were reaching the end of life and will be running out of support. So we would run into potential performance issues or definitely some security risks if we didn't get those replaced. As we started doing the initial design work on how we wanted to set up our network, and with the goal of making where our corporate network interfaces with our SCADA system as secure as possible, we decided to reach out to the manufacturer to get pricing for professional implementation services. That is reflected in the first purchase order amendment for the amount of $39,443.48. Those services have already been performed for us, and it was my oversight that I should have brought that original amendment to the board for approval before moving on with that. So the first amendment is to correct my mistake. Now, the second one, after we did some of those core network replacements, we saw just a huge performance improvement on the network. I think there's a little graph that's referenced on the item. And with the security enhancements, it was determined that replacing some of our core SCADA switches, which are also beginning to reach end of life, would be very beneficial for M1W. So this second PO amendment is for the purchase of those core SCADA switches and professional implementation services, as well as renewing support for some of our existing SCADA switches. And that's in the amount of $73,236.65. It is staff's recommendation that the committee recommend the board approve the 2 PO amendments for the corporate network refresh project by $112,680.13 for a not to exceed total amount of $329,510.27. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Directors, any questions?
Yeah, help me out with that. I'm having a little maybe I didn't quite hear the numbers right, but I'm having a little trouble adding up to the 325.
For which one? So I did not write the original cost on that one. Are you basing it off the quotes that are attached? Because the initial quotes had an incorrect tax dollar amount on it.
Oh, the 329 is for the total
Total, yes.
project, not for this.
Correct. So
item.
it puts the,
My
with those
misunderstanding.
amendments, it puts the total of this project to
Okay.
that 329,000.
Thank you for that clarification.
Directors, any other questions? Comments?
What's the length of time that we expect this refresh for the hardware to last?
Approximately 7 to 10 years. It's really, so we would look at replacing that somewhere around year 8 to 9, just so that we can be a little bit preemptive. We don't want to push it to the limit, before we don't want to wait till it starts to fail.
More? Are you
I'm good.
done?
One other follow-up question. Do we have a firm price on the equipment? I'm asking because of the current situation with tariffs.
Yes, we do. We have a set price, that is in this proposal for these.
Okay. Thank you.
And as far as I know, there are no logistical issues currently with this hardware.
It was already made in China. Thank you.
Okay, and I have a quick question. So in terms of, does this price include, I'm sure there's going to be an annual maintenance?
Yes,
or-
so this includes the first 3 years
Okay.
of maintenance as well.
And then thereafter, after the third year is up, what are we looking at? Do we have an estimate of what that cost will be?
That's really difficult for me to venture that far forward, but at that time, we would have our options if we want to do a 1-year renewal, 3-year renewal, or 5-year renewal. If we did that 5-year renewal, that would put us into like the 8-year mark of the life of this hardware. So that's kind of one of the ways we try to balance out the costs. We do a 3-year initial term and then usually look at 5 years for that second renewal.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I will bring it out to the public.
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
All righty. With that being said,
Move
there-
approval?
Second.
so we have all in favor,
Aye.
all opposed? Motion approved. Thank you. So we'll move on to item 9. Consider recommending approval of the First Amendment of contract for the AWPF contracted laboratory testing services for various Title 22 drinking water panels to Eurofins Eaton Analytical in the not to exceed amount for $235,723, which includes a 10% contingency. And with that, we have Olivia.
Hi. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Olivia Woolery, and I'm the interim laboratory supervisor at Monterey One Water. Laboratory testing services for various Title 22 drinking water panels related to the operation of Advanced Water Purification Facility, or AWPF, and the Injection Well Facility, IWF, are required for regulatory compliance. The Monterey One Water Board approved award for AWPF and IWF laboratory testing services to Eurofins Eaton Analytical, or simply Eurofins, on October 28th, 2024, for a not to exceed amount of $176,793, which included a 10% contingency. This agreement comprised of 7 months of prorated testing services ending on June 30th, 2025, and included an option for 4 single-year extensions at Monterey One Water's discretion based on vendor performance. To provide a clarification, the list prices in attachment 2 are color-coded by the laboratory performing the analyses, and the price is listed under the first listing of each analytical method, and each subsequent listing of that method will refer to the name of the laboratory performing that analysis. Eurofins' performance has met Monterey One Water's expectations, and staff wishes to extend the contract for 1 year of service. This first extension was agreed upon by Monterey One Water and Eurofins for 12 months, beginning on July 1st, 2025, and ending on June 30th, 2026, at the same analyte price as the original contract. Staff requests that the Recycled Water Committee that the board approve a First Amendment to the AWPF and IWF contracted laboratory testing services for various Title 22 drinking water panels to Eurofins Eden Analytical in the not to exceed amount of $235,723, which includes a 10% contingency. And with that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Directors? Okay, with that, could we take it out to the public? See if there's any questions or comments?
And I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor?
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay. So let's move to item 8. Oh, I didn't realize how many chemicals you had to test for a big list.
Item 10, we're on that.
Item
Yeah, I
10.
thought it was just me for a second.
Sorry. Consider recommending approval of recertification of the M1 Sewer System Management Plan. We have Daryl.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Daryl Harris, Utilities and Maintenance Service Manager, and with me is Sarah Snyder, Environmental and Regulatory Compliance Supervisor. M1W operates and maintains a sanitary sewer conveyance system to convey flows from its member agencies to the regional treatment plant for treatment and beneficial reuse. In 2006, the State Water Board adopted a statewide general waste discharge requirements to provide a regulatory approach to reduce the number and severity of sanitary sewer overflows. M1W was required to develop a sewer system management plan to outline policies and procedures for managing and the conveyance system. In 2009, M1W adopted our SSMP and completed the required 5-year recertifications in 2014 and 2019. On June 5th, 2023, the State Water Board adopted a revised WDRs, which modified the SSMP content requirement and extended the recertification schedule by 1 year. Staff updated the SSMP to include the new regulatory requirements and need to complete the 6-year recertification. For clarification, Table 5 provides the list of conveyance facilities or pump stations owned by M1W or operated and maintained. Staff requested the Recycled Water Committee recommend that the Board of Directors approve and recertify the 2025 Sewer System Management Plan, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Directors?
But so wasn't able to read every single word in the plan, but I was able to skim it, and it looks very good, particularly the response portion of it. A couple of questions. There is a table in there that lists conveyance facilities, not all of which are owned by Monterey One Water. But I assume those other non-owned conveyance facilities are connected to our force main.
It says conveyance facilities, it's basically the lift stations. So Monterey One Water owns the lift stations that are checkmarked and with an X. Everything else is a lift station that comes through our system to the RTP. So we operate and maintain those for our member entities. We have contracts with Pacific Road, Monterey, and Seaside. So those are owned by them, but we operate and maintain them. And all the flows go to our respective companies.
So for those owned by other entities, I assume they have obligations similar to the one that this plan meets. Does this plan fulfill that obligation for them?
No, each of our member entities has their own SSMP. That is a requirement from the state.
Okay. And I guess the only other, the only other question is, since we have different government agencies connected to the same system, do we ever exercise together to ensure that in the event of a problem, those interagency boundaries are more or less seamlessly crossed in the crisis?
So I'm going to have Sarah add to this, but we are a member of the jurisdiction that is made up of several entities for emergency response, from tsunamis to sewer system overflows, et cetera. And they basically update their report every 5 years, and they're in the process of starting to meet. And Daryl is a representative, and also Sarah, and they will be doing a tabletop emergencies. Now, we as our own entity, we have once a year at a minimum, we have, okay, all of a sudden there's a spill at Monterey. And so everybody, all hands on deck, goes and sets up a pump around, et cetera. So we do them internally, but as far as a group, Sarah, can you provide additional information on that?
Yes, so Tammy's referring to our participation in the Monterey County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan. And that's required essentially to make us eligible for FEMA funding if there's a disaster that's declared. So we, as Tammy mentioned, Daryl and I both sit on the technical committees. And so that's a recommendation that we'll be bringing to discuss the opportunity to do a multi-agency sort of drill response for larger events like that.
Good, good. Look forward to hearing more about that. And then last question. This is a fairly lengthy document. I assume some of our employees are supposed to read it and reread it periodically, but, you know, maybe HR doesn't have to, or Rachel Goodwin and PR doesn't necessarily have to. So who, roughly speaking, who has to have more than just a passing familiarity with this document?
So Sarah, can you provide additional information, please?
Yes, so all O&M staff are required to do an annual refresher training. I believe those training PowerPoints are provided in the appendices. We
Word.
also require, as part of our annual, what's called an illness and injury prevention plan through our safety department, there's an acknowledgement form that requires employees to be aware of the location of these plans and documents and to certify that they've reviewed and understand the content. That's also required for all O&M staff on an annual basis. So again, we do the initial training upon hire and then an annual refresher for all O&M staff. And then there's that annual acknowledgement that we do.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, so we'd like to bring it out to the public. Chai, is there anybody in the public that would like to question or comments?
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, so we'd like to bring it back to the board for a
Move
motion.
approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Item 11, we have Matt Thompson going to talk about the consider recommending award of construction contract to Royal Electric Company for the CP 310 Regional Treatment Plant Electrical Upgrade and Interconnection Project in the amount of $29,489,400.
Thank
Matt.
you. Yes. Good afternoon, committee members. I'm Matt Thompson, your Director of Engineering. With me today presenting this item is Capital Improvement Projects Manager Jennifer Gonzalez. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Let's wait for that to come up. All right. So we are pleased to recommend award of a construction contract for a project that has been years in the making and will bring many benefits to the regional treatment plant, the Salinas Valley Reclamation Project, and our advanced water purification facility. Next slide, please, Chai. Our agency originally conceived of the regional treatment plant electrical upgrade and interconnection project to replace the electrical power system for the original regional treatment plant. The existing electrical equipment, most of it is about 35 years old now and has reached the end of its useful life. Next please. And again, after completion of the renewable energy and electrical reliability study last year, it became apparent that we needed to expand the project to interconnect the electrical systems of the RTP, Salinas Valley Reclamation Project, and Advanced Water Purification Facility. This project will accomplish that. Upon completion of the project, we will be able to use renewable energy purchased from the Regen landfill to power all three of these facilities. Next click again, please. Power produced by a new standby generator and a future array of linear generators may be used by all three facilities. This will reduce our dependence on power supplied by PG&E, thus greatly improve reliability and help us to control operation costs. We will use renewable energy to make recycled water. This is a big reason why US EPA has authorized our agency to use our remaining available Water Infrastructure Financing and Innovation Act loan to finance this project. That's a loan that we commonly call the WIFIA loan. Here's an aerial view. Next slide, please, Chai. Here's an aerial view of the regional treatment plant showing where these various project components will be located. It's cut off at the bottom, the tag there, but that hammer-shaped piece is where most of the RTP electrical upgrade work will be happening, sort of down the hill from the SVRP recycled water storage pond. The branches going off to the left of that is the interconnection component. Imagine an overhead line of power that is distributing electrical power from this electrical upgrade location to the other two treatment plants. And then highlighted in red is the future renewable energy improvements project. That's a project for which you've already awarded a design contract to Black & Veatch, and design of that project is underway. And I'm hopeful that within about a year from now, we're able to come back to you to recommend award of construction of that project. And that's the project that includes the array of linear generators and upgrade of our biogas to market quality renewable natural gas for injection into the PG&E pipeline. All right, next slide, please. This project is large. It includes a new PG&E electrical service, new 21,000 volt switchgear, new transformers, new 480 volt switchgear, new cogeneration switchgear, and a new 2 megawatt capacity standby generator. The project design includes weather-rated enclosures called integrated power assemblies. These will facilitate a seamless switchover from the old to new equipment, thus minimize disruption to operations. The enclosures will properly shelter the expensive electrical components from the corrosive effects of coastal air. We only recently began design of the interconnection component. In order to facilitate construction of that piece, we included a $2 million bid allowance in the documents that we advertised for construction bids. This allowance will be held by Monterey One Water and used to build the interconnection after the design is complete and we have negotiated a change order with the contractor. We advertised the project for construction bids in January. We held a conference at the project site for prospective bidders in February that was well attended. On March 27th, we opened sealed bids. The lowest responsive bid came from Royal Electric in the amount of $29,489,400. This is about $600,000 less than our design engineer's estimate. Royal Electric is a responsible and competent electrical contractor from Sacramento. They are currently working for us as a subcontractor on the Pure Water Injection Wells Phase 4 project. So we've had an opportunity to see their work, and it is good. So, next slide, please. We recommend the Recycled Water Committee recommend to the board award of a construction contract for the RTP electrical upgrade and interconnection project in the amount of $29,489,400 to Royal Electric. If you and the board approve this project, we will move right into construction. This project involves purchase and installation of a lot of specialized electrical equipment, which takes time to manufacture. So the duration of construction will be approximately 40 months, nearly 3.5 years. So we will be financing this project through our existing low-interest WIFIA loan. The additional debt payments will be incorporated into an upcoming sewer rate study. This project is eligible for a federal investment tax credit, which would greatly offset the project costs. So as long as the tax credit remains available, we will pursue that credit. After this item, Jennifer Gonzalez will be presenting 2 related items for engineering services during construction and professional construction management services. That's all I have. Thank you for your time. I'd be glad to answer your questions.
Great. Thank you, Matt. Directors, do we have any questions? Director Williamson?
I know there's many different components to the project. It's great to see that it's coming in lower than the cost, the engineer's cost estimate. We don't get to see that too often, so happy to see that. What is the lifespan that we anticipate? I'm assuming there might be a range given the different parts of the project.
Yeah, I mean, textbook useful life for electrical gear is 15 to 20 years. But this plant, they were able to get a lot more out of the existing electrical gear. So I'm hoping that we'll be with the way that we've designed this with these enclosures to protect it from corrosion. I'm hopeful that we will be able to get at least 20 years of useful life out of this upgraded system.
And then what does the project look like as far as additional capacity? If and when there's if additional expansion, what does that look like?
Yes. This, I'd like to report that the other engineering firms that we have involved in, for example, the master plan for the comprehensive of the upgrade of the regional treatment plant, we anticipate that our power demand with the upgraded facility will increase modestly in the future. And so fortunately, those firms we're coordinating closely with our design firm on this project, and we're going to make sure we build in some adequate additional capacity to give us flexibility to add modest amounts of electrical load without the need to replace this equipment. So we're planning for that. There may be some slight modifications to some of the gear, basically upsizing the capacity of components of the electrical gear to facilitate that.
Okay. And then I see under fiscal impact, it talks about this being paid for through debt payments through the wastewater fund. Seeing how that works, I think would be helpful. I don't know if kind of describing that a little bit more in regards to what do the payments look like as it relates to the overall funds, what is already allocated versus what's available, just to kind of have a little bit more confidence in our ability to be able to pay that. So I don't know if that's something that could be outlined more when it comes to the board. Then I was going to make one more point. I think this is just a general statement. And Tom and I have had conversations with Paul about this. But there's going to be a need to refresh parts of the project, different elements associated with this. And it's not just this project, but it's things throughout our system. And it's like, how do we ensure that we're setting enough funding aside in our budget so that we're kind of not having to figure out how do we pay for things as things go along here, but we're making sure that we're setting enough funding aside to run the operations of the agency. So I'm not attacking you here on this specific item, but I think this is a good example. I mean, it's a really expensive project and we're having to do debt financing in order to achieve that. And so just trying to think about how do we ensure the long-term sustainability of the agency by making sure that we're setting enough funding aside in our budget to pay for all these things into the future. So anyways, that's it for me.
Yeah, I will add that this project is one of many in the capital improvement program that will be incorporated into the pending sewer rate study.
Okay,
And
awesome.
we are, there's a lot of sort of behind the scenes discussion about how do we pace the expenditures for these various capital improvement projects in a way that the increase needed to sewer rates is gradual and not drastic. And so we do recognize this is a particularly expensive project. That's why we're financing it. It'll, and the way that will work is we'll spend down this $29+ million over the next 3.5 years. And then we start making debt payments on it upon completion of construction. And I think it's a 20-year payback period for that debt. And so the idea is to minimize the upfront impact to sewer rates. In other words, it gives us some time to gradually increase sewer rates in a way to cover that additional debt obligation.
Well, and the benefits associated with this project too are great, right? So the efficiencies that it creates in the agency, I'm sure if we were to do a cost benefit analysis, really play out well for us. So it's a great thing, especially given the direction that we're going in. So
Matt, may I?
Go ahead, Paul.
Sorry,
Please.
this is Paul. May I just add to your comments, please? And
please.
It's in reference to Tyler's question on funding this into the future. The SRF loan that we have for the Pure Water project, as well as these WIFIA loans, do have a requirement to establish a replacement rehab fund along with the term of that loan. So, for instance, when the original plant was built, there was not a requirement to put money into reserves. So when things run out like they're doing now, to have the funds to pay for it. These loans we currently are engaged in have those requirements for the sustainability of our facilities. So Matt's answer is completely correct. We need to balance what we have existing versus what is in a loan that requires some prudent financial planning.
Thank you for that, Paul. I think one thing that would be helpful if and when things come back as it relates to this project in the future is an update in regards to how we're tracking with that reserve, just to kind of show the public, like, look, we're taking prudent efforts to not only meet our obligation as it relates to the WIFIA loan, but also the long-term sustainability of the agency. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tyler.
Well, Monterey One Water hasn't had this before, but Tyler and I have actually talked about buying you one of those ceramic piggy banks so that we can start putting pennies away for future projects. I do have two questions on this one. You mentioned the tax credit, and if I understand this correctly, and the public might not, it's not a tax credit in the sense that we fill out a Form 1040 and send it to the IRS, and in the calculations there, we get a little off our tax in the form of a tax credit. This is actual money that comes to us. Is that correct?
Yeah, I should clarify that. A tax credit is a bit of a misnomer for an agency like ours that does not pay taxes. And you're correct. The way it works is after you complete the project, you fill out paperwork documenting completion of the project, you submit it to IRS, and the IRS sends you a direct payment for a certain percentage of the total project costs. It can range from 6 to 40%, but typically for projects like this, it's about 30% of the total project costs. And I will also add that when there was the change in the presidential administration, there was a lot of talk about dismantling
this tax credit
associated with the Inflation Reduction Act for renewable energy projects like this. At this point in time, the investment tax credit remains in place and available. So for all these projects that we're pursuing, we're doing our best to take advantage of that while the opportunity is still there.
And I'm going to add, Matt, while we certainly enjoy Matt's optimism, I'm going to bring the old cynical viewpoint of we haven't received a cent yet, so we're not booking it, but we are hopeful, as he mentioned, for that 6 to 35%. But at this point, we have received nothing.
Oh, well, and if I understood Matt's description correctly, we can't really apply for it until we can't really apply for it on this project until we actually complete this project. Is
That's
that correct?
Correct. So we look at this very similar to how we view grants. We don't book them until we have a check in hand. And if you remember, Matt referenced the linear generators that the board approved late last year. That is another item which we will submit for a tax credit as well. It's a process.
But of course, there's tremendous uncertainty in the current environment, and this could go away with a snap of President Trump's fingers.
Sorry.
Sorry, I misspoke. And what are your thoughts? You know, all this talk of tariffs, I can imagine that at the very least, even if we're buying American for every bit of this electrical equipment, those manufacturers rely on components coming from various overseas sources, which may now be hit with tariffs. So can you comment on your thoughts about, is there anything we can do to mitigate for cost escalation over this next 3-year period as we do this project?
Yeah, well, the contractor bid it at this amount. They went and collected costs for these various electrical components, and they typically will project out when they expect to take delivery of the components, and they use that cost in their bid. So the contractor will be obligated to supply this equipment at the price that they've bid this project for. I will say most of this electrical component is to be supplied by electrical company Eaton, which we understand manufactures most of this higher power electrical equipment in the United States. So it may not be as vulnerable to changing tariffs as some of the other projects that we do.
That's good. And we'll keep our fingers crossed that the contractor doesn't somewhere down the line ask for a cost increase and cite force majeure or something like that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question. So on the, I noticed you do have a backup generator that it's like 21, was it 21?
It's the project includes a 2 megawatt
Or 2 megawatt.
capacity.
Okay. So in terms of having that backup, and I saw that you had a PG&E interconnection there. Is there, in case of everything failing, there is going to be connection to PG&E in terms of the
Yes.
third backup?
Yes, PG&E we will always remain connected to PG&E. And for the near term, PG&E will remain our primary source of power. But as we add things like the power coming from regen and the new power coming from these linear generators, we'll gradually reduce our dependence on PG&E power. And our goal is to get to a place where we're essentially running nearly independent of PG&E, but that PG&E service is always there in case our systems fail or whatever may happen.
Great. Thank you. So any other?
Yeah, just one follow-up with respect to the linear generators. And so we're getting power from regen. They are generating themselves. Are they buying any linear generators, or they, as far as you know, their plans are to stick with the more standard?
Their existing power generation station has generators that have quite a bit of remaining useful life. My understanding is that they intend to continue running the existing power generation station, but they are exploring what they will use to replace their existing internal combustion engines in the longer term. I don't know what technology they've chosen. I can imagine that linear generators may be a technology that they consider.
Do to your knowledge, do they have excess gas? The reason,
They have they have an abundance of methane gas
the reason I
above and beyond what they're currently using to
generate
generate
power.
electrical power.
Oh, I guess where I'm going with this is, should this design include, say, a linear generator close to their property line with the idea of possibly getting gas from them in part to feed it rather than just gas from our own processes?
So, Matt, I'm going to chime in just for a second. I am meeting with Felipe next week, and last time I discussed this with them, they were doing a concurrent design, thinking about renewable natural gas with their methane. They were not as far ahead as we currently are, but I do want to try to coordinate our respective projects as best as we can to serve our respective customers, which are substantially similar. But as Matt said, they currently have 5 cogen engines that produce plenty of power for us as well as them, and they still sell back to PG&E. So whether it's a linear generator, we can take some gas from them, or something else, we'll have to see what their design entails in the next year or so.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Anybody else? Okay, we'd like to take it out to the public. Chai, we have a couple raised hands, and we have Mark Kelly. Mr. Kelly?
Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
You'll have to unmute.
I did that. Thank you, Tom. A question. The rate study, is it still due to be back to the board by the first part of 2026? Is that still the plan?
Yes, that is the plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kelly. Next on here, we have Ms. Chavone.
We're going to hear from Susan Scavone. Go ahead,
Scavone.
Ms. Scavone.
Hello, everybody. This is a wonderful idea. It's going to be great for sustainable energy. My only concern is I just wanted to hear about what are the hazard risks involved with this new setup. And I have concerns about what a possible, what could happen as a possible hazard that could happen, and what kind of safety protocols are going to be in place, like on-site prevention or on-site suppression of something. Should some sort of, fire happen or something, what kind of plan is in place for dealing with it? And is there on-site ability to deal with that if something were to happen? Thank you.
Yeah, I should start by emphasizing that this project does not include any battery storage. So there won't be any sort of chemicals associated with storage of electrical power. We are currently using large amounts of electrical power and distributing it through our plant in a safe manner. This new equipment will essentially be replacing the existing equipment with newer modern technology. This new modern electrical equipment is specifically designed to be safer for operational personnel, with enclosures, for example, that are rated to minimize the potential for arcing of high voltage electricity. So it will generally be an improvement for operational personnel. So a general improvement in safety, I would say.
I was going to say, we've had some incidents with our current structure. So the fact that we're doing this upgrade seems to create a safer environment for our team. But I think to her point, I'm assuming that there are procedures in place that our staff is trained on in order to respond to any type of incident.
There definitely are safety procedures associated with, for example, the hazards of arcing electricity, that all the staff that will be involved in operating this equipment will get full technical training on the new equipment to know well how to safely operate it.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Scavone. So with that being said, any more comments, questions? All right, I'd like to entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Moving on to agenda item number 12. From Jennifer Gonzalez, consider recommending award of engineering services during construction of ESDC contract to TGCAA for the CP310 Regional Treatment Plant electrical upgrade and interconnection project in the amount of $1,098,400.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Hubino and members of the committee. I'm Jennifer Gonzalez, CIP Manager. Staff has been working with TJC and Associates on the design of the project that you just recommended approval or to go to the board for approval. Since 2019, we've had several starts and stops along the way due to funding constraints and shifting priorities as we've gone. This contract is an essential part of the larger project to ensure its success. The engineering services during construction contract will include 14 separate tasks to be included throughout the 40-month duration of the project. A lot of work will be required up front to ensure that the contractor's submittals are correct. Later in the project, electrical modeling and arc flash studies will be completed for the safety of the system and of our staff. TJC will attend regular construction meetings, coordinate with PG&E, and prepare record drawings. The cost of these services will be financed with the larger project using the existing US EPA WIFIA loan. The cost of these engineering services during construction is about 3.7% of the construction contract, which is the appropriate range for these types of services. Staff recommends that the Recycled Water Committee consider recommending to the Board of Directors approval of a professional services agreement for engineering services during construction with TJC and Associates for the CP310 RTP electrical upgrade and interconnection project in the amount of $1,098,400. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
I'll go ahead and move-
Directors?
I'll go ahead and move approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
public.
Oops,
Oh.
public.
Sorry, I was quick to make the motion, so I put it through you off there a little bit.
All right, Chai, do we have anybody from the public that would like to comment?
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
And I'll just say Jennifer probably got it easy because we gave it all to Matt, so keep doing it that way.
Okay, we have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, item number 13. Consider recommending award of construction management services contract to Carollo Engineers for the CP310 Regional Treatment Plant electrical upgrade and interconnection project not to exceed the amount of $3,419,972. And with that, Jennifer?
All right, thank you. This item follows the last two items on the agenda as part of the same project. Staff issued a request for proposals for construction management services on January 29th. A mandatory pre-proposal meeting was attended by 6 firms on February 19th. On March 25th, 2 proposals were received. An evaluation team of 5 staff members reviewed the proposals and held interviews with the proposed teams on April 2nd. The team found that Carollo Engineers is the most qualified and best fit for this project. All proposed team members have electrical construction background and are experienced with very large projects of significant complexity. The cost of these services will be financed again through the WIFIA loan, and the cost is about 11.5% of the construction contract, which again is the appropriate range for these types of services. Staff requests that the Recycled Water Committee consider recommending to the Board of Directors approval of a construction management services contract to Carollo Engineers for the CP 310 Regional Treatment Plant Electrical Upgrade and Interconnection Project in the not to exceed amount of $3,419,972. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Directors?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, I'd like to take it out to the public at this time. Chai, do we have anybody in the public that would like to comment?
Don't see any raised hands from the public.
Great. So, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Item 14. Tom, consider recommending approval, a change order in the amount of $1,452,000 in the Mountain Cascade Incorporated construction contract for the CP 330 Monterey Pump Station upgrades and CP 331 Seaside Pump Station upgrades project for the installation of the SEPS fire suppression line, replacement of the SEPS emergency generator fuel storage system, and release of an additional $1 million contingency to bring the total contingency amount to $1,979,223. And with that, we have Tom to give a presentation.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Tom Credis, Associate Engineer, here to speak with you about two requested changes to the aforementioned construction contract. In May 2023, bid documents were completed for construction of CP 330 Monterey Pump Station, or MOPS, upgrades project, and CP 331 Seaside Pump Station, or SEPS, upgrades project. Construction of this project was advertised for bid on June 14th, 2023, and bids were opened on August 3rd of the same year. In your August 2023 board meeting, in conjunction with an award of an engineering services during construction contract to Carollo, this construction contract was awarded to Mountain Cascade Incorporated, MCI, for the not to exceed amount of $33,812,973 plus a $1 million contingency. That ends up being a 3% contingency to this construction contract amount. Notice to proceed for construction of this project was issued on September 20th, 2023. Now, while construction of this project is going well, this is an extensive electrical and mechanical overhaul of both the MOPS and SEPS systems. These are uninterruptible facilities that adds to the complexity of the construction. In addition, for these old facilities for which as-built drawings and documentation are relatively incomplete and poor from the early 1980s construction and subsequent upgrades, there's been significantly more RFIs, requests for information, that is, design clarifications, submittal revisions, and design modifications, significantly more of those items than anticipated over the course of this project, over the 19 months that have elapsed so far. Like I said, this is largely due to unknown site and facility conditions for these old facilities and the incomplete as-built documentation. Considering the many RFI or project-driven changes that have occurred to this point and anticipated during the upcoming electrical overhaul phase of the project that will be starting very soon, the initial contingency amount of $1 million is not expected to be sufficient. Current change order exposure, which is executed contract change orders and pending change orders, is at $979,223. Additional contingency is needed for remaining work on the project and to ensure that the project is completed successfully, achieving all of its goals. Project completion is scheduled for February of 2027. So in order to keep the project moving and not cause any unnecessary delays to construction and complications associated with the fact that these facilities need to remain online, Staff is requesting an additional $1 million in contingency. This will bring the total contingency amount of this project to $1,979,223, which amounts to 5.9% of the total awarded construction cost. This is quite a bit lower than the typical contingency on a project like this, which is 10%, which would have been right around $3.4 million. In addition, over the course of this project thus far, staff has identified additional facility improvements that will add value and useful life to the SEPS facility. Sometimes we refer to these kind of changes as owner-initiated or owner-identified changes. The first of these is the 2,700-foot fire suppression line from the for the Seaside Pump Station. The nearest connection for a fire suppression line is at the Monterey Tides Hotel up Sand Dunes Drive, about 2,700 feet away. And the need for this fire suppression line was underscored during the fire incident that we experienced in September of 2024. Another item which was identified was a replacement of the 6,000-gallon emergency generator fuel storage system for the Seaside Pump Station. This fuel tank is corroded and at the end of its useful life. The estimated construction cost for this item is $514,000. And let me back up and point out that the estimated construction for the SEPS fire suppression line is $938,000. Given that Mountain Cascade, or MCI, is fully mobilized for ongoing project work and very familiar with the locale and the stakeholders, staff proposes to complete both of these owner-initiated changes, that is the SEPS fire suppression line and replacement of the SEPS emergency generator fuel storage. Staff recommends that this work be done by a change order under the current contract to have MCI perform this work. In addition to that, in addition to the contingency increase described above, staff would be requesting that this construction contract amount for MCI be increased to $1,452,000 for these two additional owner-initiated changes. With that taken into account, the contingency increase and these owner-initiated changes discussed, staff would recommend that the Recycle Water Committee recommend approval of one, a change order in the amount of $1,452,000 for Mountain Cascade, in the Mountain Cascade construction contract for the CP330 Monterey Pump Station upgrades and CP331 Seaside Pump Station upgrades project, for installation of the SEPS fire suppression line and replacement of the SEPS emergency generator fuel storage system, and two, release of an additional $1 million contingency to bring the total project contingency amount up to $1,979,223. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you, Tom. Directors? Director Williamson?
How are we looking at, as we're developing these things and adding things to the project, how are we looking at the impact to the salt water has on the infrastructure? Like, for example, the tank with the corrosion, are we looking at different material? What does that look like?
The tank that we would like to use for the replacement of the 6,000-gallon tank at Seaside is a much newer system. The existing tank is a pretty old style steel coated, of course, but a coated steel fuel tank. This new system is a pretty cool system where it's a rectangular tank, a rectangular steel tank with, I believe it's a 9-inch thick reinforced concrete jacket around it. So essentially you walk up to it and it's a rectangular concrete lined steel tank. So that concrete is going to provide increased protection for the steel tank.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And then I think I asked this at the last meeting around, so I understand we're putting in the fire suppression line for the Seaside Pump Station. Did we look at what the potential need might be for the Monterey Pump Station as well?
So I was at Monterey Pump Station last week looking at the the city water feed to that facility that the Navy shares with us. I did not locate a hydrant at that exact facility. I had to inspect some other things on the project, but my intent for this next week was to sort of backtrack out of the facility and onto the bike path and try to locate the nearest fire hydrant, because that would definitely be a concern that we may want to address at a future date.
Absolutely. It would be good to hear what the results of your search are there, and if there's a need to add that to the project. And then my last question is, as it's alluded to in the staff report, usually there's a contingency of 10%. I don't know if it's appropriate for us. I know that staff is only asking for the additional $1 million as it relates to the contingency, but I don't know if we provide some additional flexibility. I mean, I think it's a relatively small cost in the grand scheme of the project, given the fact that we're not going to that full contingency amount. So I wonder if staff feels like it would be appropriate for us to authorize an additional amount. I would say going to the 10%, but if staff feels maybe something a little bit more moderate might be appropriate. I just want to be able to provide the flexibility and allowing, because I'm assuming something else is going to come up along the way here with these projects.
So Tyler, if I may chime in on that one.
Please.
Staff initially requested a larger contingency amount. I asked that we issue the change orders that have been initiated by us and then replenish the existing contingency amount. The reason being, just from a transparency and optics perspective, I wanted to make sure the board was comfortable with the amount of money that staff has authority to use. Anything above and beyond that, we would come to the board anyway. So it was sort of trying to strike that balance between not slowing up the contractor nor our people in getting the job done, but also not putting so much in a contingency account that maybe members of the public or other people may question the total amount. As Tom mentioned, on a percentage basis, it is appropriate to be in the $3 million range. However, that is a lot of money to have in a contingency fund. If the board would like to do something different, we certainly can. That was just my initiation of it.
Would you be comfortable if I offer a motion that would grant a $3 million contingency? Because my assumption is that staff's going to give us an update, and you guys have done a wonderful job on giving us an update in regards to the issues as they relate to this project.
Yeah, what I would say is certainly if the board would like to increase the contingency to allow quicker and easier administration of the construction contract, that would be great. I would just state that at each board meeting, there would be a verbal update on the status of change orders, other requests, and the total funds that have been expended.
Okay, thank you for that. That's it for me.
Great, thank you. Director Moore?
No.
Okay, with that, I'd like to bring it out to the public. Chai?
I don't see any raised hands from the public.
So I'll bring it back to the board.
Move approval.
Well, so
So
I'll second, but can I make a friendly amendment to authorize the contingency to go to 10%?
Okay. I'll go along with that.
all right. Do we need to say that all in one sentence here?
Staff, you clear.
Can I help to clarify your amendment?
Please.
We have proposed some owner initiated changes that will help to reserve a lot of the remaining available contingency. We have recommended an increase of $1 million to the contingency, which brings us to $1,979,223. We're asking you to approve the owner initiated changes in addition to this contingency amount. I might make a friendly amendment that instead of just increasing it to 10%, that instead of replenishing it at $1 million, perhaps replenish it to $2 million. Okay, so that would bring us to 2,979,223. Okay, and what that would accomplish is that the owner initiated changes plus this 2,979,223 is still around the total change order percentage of around 10%.
Absolutely. Yep.
That would give us the additional room that we need to efficiently execute this contract and get this project done on time without having to come back for another replenishment. I'm fairly confident we can get this project done under that $2,979,223 contingency amount.
Yeah, that sounds about right where I was going with the 10%, but I think that doing the $1 million, I think is more or less the same. So I'm good with that. I'm good with that.
And just to be clear, these change orders are change orders, so they're not really coming out of the contingency as long as the additional cost of the change orders is recognized in the new not to exceed amount. Yeah. So I'll recommend to the board of directors that they approve the change orders and that the new not to exceed amount be $2,979,223.04.
Where's Lawrence at? We need him to make sure we got this down.
So I one clarification point. So if Monterey needs fire suppression, like upgrades or new lines or whatever for this fire suppression, will that be a change order, a new amendment, or would that be part of the contingency?
Well, we would have to scope out the need and determine the cost. Hopefully it wouldn't require 2,700 feet of new water pipeline like the Seaside pump station does. And we could get it done for a lot less. And so there is a possibility that we could use the contingency to cover that. But we again, we need to scope out the need before we can really answer your question.
Great. Okay. All right. So we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion passes. So now we're moving on to item 15 from Bob Holden. Consider recommending increasing contract with Larry Walker and Associates for the NPDES services for the Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project by $193,059.78 for a not to exceed amount of $828,859.78.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Whoa. Yes. Chair and members of the committee, I'm Bob Holden, principal engineer. So we are working for California American Water on their Monterey Peninsula Water Supply Project. We're doing two projects, NPDES permit and outfall improvements project work. So you approved contract with Larry Walker Associates back in November of 2023 to start the contract process for the NPDES permit. And then in September last year, you approved the report of waste discharge at the board. And then the next day we submitted that report of waste discharge to the regional board. September 31st this year, we got a letter from the regional board with a list of deficiencies within that ROWD, the report of waste discharge, which mostly had to do with the pressure relief structure, reducing structure that we talked about at the board meeting, and its associated issues of pressure and other things. So we've gone through and looked at other alternatives and are looking currently at a different type of rubber material, different number of diffusers, And we have 3 new technical memorandums that we're asking Larry Walker Associates to produce to answer questions both asked and questions that we anticipate to be asked for a new submittal of a report of waste discharge, which we would bring to you for approval. Plus, they need to revise some of the technical memorandum that were submitted originally. So altogether, that represents yes, $193,059.78 of additional work for a total not to exceed amount of $828,859.78. And I would ask that you would recommend the board approve this contract amendment. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Holden. Directors, do we have any questions, comments? Like to take it out to the public at this time. Chai?
And I don't see any raised hands from the public.
Okay, great. I'm bringing it back to the board.
Move approval. Second.
Okay, person second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Holden. Okay, so on to 16, staff reports. Tammy?
Hi, Chairman and Board. I'd like to give you a couple updates. We fired up SRDF and we're taking river water as of Monday, so we're excited about that. We did have a shutdown for almost an entire day at AWPF. It happened about 9 o'clock in the morning and we were able to start producing about 6 o'clock, and I'm going to ask Daryl to provide some details about it. Other than that, everything's going well and just still producing water and giving recycle water to CSIP. And with this agreement that's going to come down the pike, that will be pulling water from Pond 3, but a lot of things happening right now.
Yeah, so following up on that at AWPF last Friday, we have, AWPF has 2 air compressor systems, Atlas Capco scroll compressors, and each unit contains 2 compressors. 3 of the 4 compressors failed last Friday, and the 4th one that runs in there wouldn't produce enough air to keep up with the system. So our option at that time was either try to rent some oil-free compressors. We had an older compressor that we had pulled up from service from another facility that we had sitting out back in our storage. So we was able to get that one online, service it, get it online, and like Tam said, by 6 o'clock in the evening, we were making water again at AWPF. We have new compressors coming to replace the ones that failed, and the ones that failed, we're going to send those back out to Atlas Capco for a survey and see if they can rebuild them and try to figure out why they failed at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. Those should have lasted 15 years, not 4. So we're wondering what went on, and I'll go ahead and hand it to Matt.
Is there a warranty on those?
They're out of the warranty, but we're still going to have them do a investigation to see what went wrong, because like Tam said, they shouldn't have failed that stuff.
Well, and for 3 separate ones to fail simultaneously, that's highly suspicious.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add, I believe you know that we've been working through entitlements to complete the Pure Water Monterey injection wells pipeline. We have sorted out an easement agreement with Marina Coast Water District and are in the process of executing that. And now I think we're just waiting for the return of the signed document from Marina Coast. But there is one parcel that you'll recall actually turned out to be still owned by the U.S. Army. And Tom can elaborate if needed, but the latest update from the U.S. Army is that they are going to convey that parcel of land to the city of Seaside by May 31st, which would enable us to resume construction and completion of the pipeline segment through there. So I think that's good news. it is a federal agency doing a real estate transaction. So we're cautiously optimistic that we can get right back to work shortly after May 31st on that segment of pipeline. In the meantime, the contractor continues to work on other aspects of the project. There's a lot of electrical work that's being done on the injection wells phase 4 project at this particular time. So that's where the contractor's attention is currently.
And thank you for being diligent with the U.S. Army, particularly in a current situation where there are a fair number of employees of that organization taking the fork in the road. So that's not likely to speed up work. My understanding also is that that parcel is part of an obligation on the part of the city of Seaside to transfer it to Marina Coast Water District once they receive it. So I assume you're ensuring that however the easements get put together, they'll seamlessly transfer to Marina Coast so that you don't have to go through yet another easement process with Marina Coast.
Well, we do anticipate we will ultimately have to record a new easement with Marina Coast because, as you have pointed out, shortly after the Army conveys this parcel to City of Seaside, our understanding is that City of Seaside intends to quit claim that parcel to Marina Coast Water District. So it will eventually be owned by Marina Coast Water District. And we will record another easement document. Fortunately, we have a template. And it's the one that we're in the process of executing. And so hopefully that'll go a lot more swiftly than the first set of easements did.
Good. Thank you.
Frank, do you have anything? Anybody else? I think we're good here. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Tim. I actually have a question regarding SRDF. How does the forecast look for the summer in terms of water releases, availability?
That's a good question. We had water quality and ops yesterday, and WRA will be releasing from both reservoirs, but not to the extent that they have in the past, only because they want to save some of that water in case there's no rain and for next year. And so that's why this short-term agreement or interim agreement of taking Pond 3, because WRA has first right of refusal of taking that extra water, because we might not be using the dam as much as we have in the past. And so as long as they tell us we can take it, we're taking everything we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any other comments?
I was just going to add, anytime that Tom is joining us for these meetings, we have to call somebody Tommy. Used of what's going on when.
Okay.
Yeah, one comment. So Tuesday night was the quarterly meeting of the Special Districts Association of Monterey County. And one of the speakers, who has forgotten exactly which board he is on, but one of the speakers happens to live in Prunedale, is now moving to Carmel because of the Moss Landing battery fires. And there was an interesting discussion. He quoted the tonnage of heavy metals that were vaporized in that fire. And, you know, that tonnage doesn't mysteriously disappear, right? There's no Star Trek transporter to transport it to the center of the sun. It spread out in whatever direction the wind blew it and potentially has been settling out on the ground. There is some research work going on to take a look at that. However, one of the directors from the Mosquito Abatement District spoke up to say that in the areas near the Moss Landing fire, where they knew there was some settle out of this material, all the mosquitoes, all the crickets, everything died. I mean, there was a sterilization, at least of insect life. So I don't need an answer to this, but I have no idea to what extent any of those plumes came south enough to affect our treatment plant. But we've got biological stuff in that treatment plant that probably wouldn't like to be whacked with cadmium and lithium and whatever else was in that plume. So I hope that maybe we're at least taking a look to see if there were any spikes in problems around that time with the biological fauna that we're using for our treatment processes. I don't know if we need to go to the extent of taking any soil samples from around the plant and send them off for testing to see if there's any residuals, but the main complaint from the Prunedale resident board member was that he feels the government response to this has so far been a little slow in coming. And we like to be ahead of the curve at times here at Monterey One Water, so I would certainly encourage some thinking on that. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any other comments? Okay, with that being said, meeting adjourned.